Hey, it's Mike Byrnes with another episode of Business Bests. I am excited to be here again, continuing the conversation on business planning. I already talked about core values and mission statements, but one of the other things is now you start to get into the business plan itself. Those are components of it, but you start to get into the weeds of creating the plan. And one of the favorite things that I believe delivers the best results, I guess it's not the favorite thing, but it's one of the best consulting processes, is the SWOT analysis. So SWOT it. A SWOT, if you don't know what it is, if you go for your MBA, it's Business Planning 101. The SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And if you go through that process, you're going to get a lot of valuable information that will impact your business plan. So you don't want to just kind of dive in and say, here's the plan, without trying to do this higher look, the 30,000 foot view, and then the 10,000 foot view, and then you get down to 500 feet, and then you get into the ground level. All of those different phases are important before you actually do a written business plan. With the SWOT analysis, some best practices that you want to do is think of the macro level. Think of what are those things that may be outside of your control? What do they look like? Where's the world shifting? Demographics, psychographics, some of the kind of the marketing stuff that you would think about. How does that impact your business? What's going to change? I don't think things are going to stay the same for very long. You've heard me say it before, AI is going to revolutionize everything, and everything's going to change on the dime. It's going to happen really quickly. So be open to what those macro changes are, and then go back to what the micro would look like. And think of those external factors. Do they impact the business as a whole, or is it just one service that you provide, or one department, or one division? Maybe just down to the actual person. Something, for example, that might be external is you just can't recruit people anymore because they don't go to college for that degree, or whatever it might be. So think of all those things that are kind of out of your control. Pest is a kind of a thing that I've had people think about. Political, what might influence your business from that standpoint. On the E side of it, economics, what do those things look like? How is that going to impact things? The S would be social, what different things are kind of happening on the social landscape. And then T for pest, in the pest wording, it would be technology. And technology, again, is going to impact things at scale. And probably any kind of technology that you use, I'm a big believer that's going to change pretty drastically in the next 5 years. One of the exercises that I think you should do is, I'm a big believer of having a facilitator, but actually ask your associates 4 simple questions. Firm related, what are our strengths? What's the company A's strength? What's the company's weaknesses? What's the company's opportunities? And what are the threats? They can actually do this at the individual level too, and they can kind of self-evaluate. This could be something that could be really valuable for an individual business plan, but some of this stuff can actually roll up. This is why you really need to have a facilitator. If you have a third party that gathers this information, they can take the names of the sources off. When I talked about research before, and how I said clients will oftentimes just give the warm, fuzzy information, associates are the same way. Like, they're not going to want to rock the boat and think that they could get fired by giving you the true feedback or insightful feedback or ideas. So one of the things that you're going to want to try to do is create a layer, and then when these answers get submitted, what I do personally is I take everyone's name off of it, and then I jumble them up. So when I categorize things, maybe I will change the order and change anything that would give away who the names are. Actually, I've gone through this process enough times to know too, sometimes people kind of have a personal vendetta against other individuals, and there's something that they're bitter about, and so they really sometimes destroy somebody in the feedback for the SWOT analysis. So that's nice to have a facilitator too that can kind of take that information, make sure that it's captured, but take the person's name out of it, and actually, but have that information. The facilitator, if they're actually doing the consulting too, can still keep that in the back of their mind that associate might be a problem, or the person giving the feedback might be a problem, or what does that look like? And so that's why having that layer is really important. By people having the freedom to come up with ideas and not be embarrassed of them, that's really valuable. But on the weaknesses part, super, super valuable to be able to gather information that is anonymous in some ways, right? I guess you could always go back and say who said that, but I've never given that information to somebody that's ever asked me. But I would say that you're probably going to get better inputs into the SWOT if you create that comfort level with these people that are submitting the information. So you gather all the information and you look at it. One of the things that always happens, because we're humans, is people go right to the weaknesses. They want to see what the weaknesses are. They react to them, whatever. So I make sure that when I display this information, I don't just email it out. We actually have a meeting about it. And I'll hold off the weaknesses and go through the strengths, because a lot of us are wired the way we'll forget the 9 positive things, but we'll remember the 1 negative thing. I will also say that this could be the only way that they provide feedback up, and so you will see more weaknesses come out because they're not afraid of ownership or the management being hard on them. So actually, a lot of times you'll see a strength list that maybe, I'm just giving an example, that might be this long, but the weaknesses are 4 or 5 times as long. And that's actually can be a good thing, right? The more you uncover that stuff, the better it can be. And then what you want to do once you gather all that information, so you kind of cautiously go through it, the next part of the analysis that I think is, how do you combine the strengths with the opportunities? So kind of where the puck's going, you want to be. You've heard that saying before, but how do you take those strengths and build on them? And is there opportunities within your business to take advantage of some of those trends that could be fruitful for you in the future? A really important question to ask: will the weaknesses and the threats combine? If there's some way that is going to overlap, that should be a big red flag, and you really should spend a lot of time on the business plan and figure out what that looks like. And if that's going to happen in the near term, you might have to make a major pivot, major correction, major enhancement. If it isn't something that you have to worry about, that's okay. Sometimes threats are out there. They're always going to be out there. An owner, the owner's health or management, a senior executive's health is always something that could be a threat. Divorce is one that is interesting too. Even somebody getting sick within a family, people are not as effective if they're a caregiver at home. So some common threats that you might see: legal is always one that's pretty common. Technological advancements. Is there something that would replace what you're doing on the horizon? Competitors can be a threat. What do those look like? There's a lot of stereotypical ones. Is there something in the political kind of environment that's being debated, and if one party gets in, they might vote for it, and that could have a significant change on your business? Do you have to prepare for that? You can't always have a crystal ball of knowing what that stuff looks like, but you should know what's on the horizon if you can. So you've gone through the SWOT analysis and you've had some time to analyze it. This is where you're actually now kind of getting into that next phase that people want to jump into right off the bat. Before, I had said one of the don'ts is don't put it on paper. The reality is, I've heard some very successful people say that it was because of a business plan that they succeeded. One of my favorites all time was, it wasn't a client of mine because this wouldn't have been a best practice that I would have recommended, but the owners of the organization were out having a couple cocktails and they were talking, and they weren't, when they were together, they still kind of talked about business a little too much. And they said, well, why don't we do this? We should be doing that. And they kind of said, well, we've been talking about this stuff for years. And another round of drinks came and they're a little bit looser in what they're saying. And a credit to one lady, she said, let's write these things down. And on the back of a little white cocktail napkin, I can only imagine the font size or the print size. She's writing all these different things out. And she spoke in front of 300 people and said, the reason we are so successful is because of that napkin. That was the one thing that took our firm to the next level, because now they had some ways to go back into the office, and so it was basically an unofficial offsite. So they had all these different little techniques, all these different categories of things that they could focus in on to improve their business. And that's really where you want to go. You want to start to think about what are those things that are going to have a significant impact? What are some of those things you got to keep consistent to? One of the things that I'll see as a major issue with business planning is they try to put too much in. And I think that's good, but I have some advice for that. Before, I want you to kind of think of a juggler. So let's say the best juggler can juggle 12 things at once, and you throw the 13th thing in. What happens? Not just does that 13th thing fall, but 5 or 6 fall, or maybe all of them fall. So when you start to get spread too thin, if your business plan has you working on too many different things, that is only going to be an issue because you're now not going to move the needle on any of them. So when I do this work, I really try to think about what are the major 3 initiatives. It doesn't mean some of these things can't be moving forward in the background, but the major focus is what are these top 3 things, maybe 4. It all depends on how many people you have working on this stuff, because some things can work in parallel. And actually, in the business plan template that I use, I created something called a parking lot. And you think about it, like, hey, all these cars are moving forward. By the way, we don't want to forget these other cars, so we're going to keep them in the parking lot, and then we could go back and circle back to get them out at some point. And when next time you revise this business plan or whatever, so that's something important to think about is not only getting them all on paper, but then prioritizing what are those things that are going to make the most impact. What are those things that we really need to focus in on? One of the things that should be in the business plan is actually business planning. You should have something in the business plan that actually says focus on planning, and it should be part of the calendar year. Hey, we're going to have an offsite planning here, figure out where it's going to be, what type of format, who's going to be involved. By the way, then quarterly, we're going to have a senior executive meeting, then we're going to talk about business planning, and we're going to go offsite to do that because when people are in the office, they can't function well. And oh, by the way, we still want to get our employees' feedback, and so let's get them all together for an annual meeting, and here's a component that would be business planning related. And how does that all bubble up? Is it the chicken or the egg? Like, does the business plan happen at the senior level, and then you kind of tell the employees at the lower level? That can backfire. You know, if you kind of force something on them and they don't have any ownership or they didn't have any stakes in creating it, they might revolt. They might not think it's something that is who they are or what they want to do. Core values is a good example, right? If you force core values on people and it's not who they are at an individual level, they're not going to want to buy into that. So at some point, you want to have the associates actually be part of the business planning before you actually do the big roll-up business plan. What's the seasonality of this? How do you hold yourself accountable? Sometimes year-end, like people want to do the business plan in December. What's one of the craziest times of the year, professionally and personally? It can be December, right? So even like starting at Thanksgiving with vacation time, sicknesses kind of happen a little bit more in the winter, not always, but sometimes. And so people kind of get distracted and they're not fully focused. It's nice. I do agree. It's nice to have a calendar focus, and sometimes reporting is based on that. So there could be some seasonality to it, but maybe you start the work earlier. If you do want to have a calendar January 1 type of business plan, then maybe you need to start it in October. I worked at a big company. I think it started in June, and they would start to roll up all these ideas, and that was crazy. But that was just the type of crazy personalities that led that organization, and it succeeded. But it was definitely a lot of time was spent on business planning. So figure out what that seasonality is and then book it so that you make sure that you hold yourself accountable. Within the business plan, I had heard about SMART goals a long time ago, and I was like, that's one too many letters, so I came up with BEST goals. So Byrnes Consulting coined the term BEST goals, got it copyrighted. What BEST stands for, one letter less, is business driven, It's important to have that business focus to your goals. Are they actually going to drive you to succeed? E is effective, so are these things written in an effective way that's going to have a lot of success within your organization? The last two, I think, are the ones that I focus in on the most from a consulting standpoint. The S stands for specific, and T is timely. So timely is actually kind of another version of specific. But so with specific, the more specific you can be with your goals, the more you can measure them. You can hold people accountable, the more you can compensate people within your organization that they move forward. So specific is really important. Don't just have the 30,000-foot view. Every time you kind of have a big umbrella type of goal, get a little bit more specific, and a little bit more specific, and a little bit more specific. So I do believe that business plan should be kind of simple and not this big encyclopedia, but it doesn't mean you can't have it be the mothership of which there's a whole bunch of little different satellites that roll up underneath it. So for example, growth might be your major initiative, but you might get down into the weeds and say, well, marketing is a key part of growth, and we need to do all these different components from email marketing to marketing collateral to social media to PR and events and all that stuff. Well, then you can have a plan within those different categories, right? So e-newsletter would be part of marketing communications. How many times are you going to do it? Who's going to go out? Who's it going to go out to? What's it going to look like? What's the format? What's the plan for the year? Then you have the metric for success. Like, did you actually create an editorial calendar for content? Did you hold people accountable? The people that are supposed to create the content, the people who are supposed to push it out, did they stick to their timeline? What were the metrics for success for that thing? What were the click-throughs and the open rates? I'm just giving you one really kind of granular version of a business plan. So there's almost like a project plan for all the different initiatives. And you think about like that tree, like the business plan is the base, and then you kind of see those big roots that are going on the ground. Those are the initiatives. And then everything that's underground and it branches out are those more specifics to the business plan. So think about BEST and how that could help you improve. I really see that's probably the number one thing that people fall down on. They don't create those specifics. If you do create the specifics, and then timely is just holding the specifics to a deadline, right? We're going to do X, Y, and Z by this time. Then you have the ability to measure. In business planning, you hear of KPIs, key performance indicators, whatever it might be. What are those metrics to succeed? If you just kind of create a business plan and then hope that it happens, you're not going to be actually managing the business plan. So earlier I said one of the things you want to avoid is don't just let the business plan gather dust and just sit on a shelf kind of thing. You want to go back to it, and what are those things that you're going to be measuring regularly that will help you go back to it to make sure you're moving forward. I really want you to think of a business plan like a railroad, and when they put down the tracks for the railroad, they didn't just kind of guess where it was going to go and just put down the tracks and they're like, oh man, we made it out to California, right? They had a strategy. They had the end in mind. And if you have a business plan with the end in mind, it's going to be more successful, right? Because then all that planning and all the metrics and all that stuff gets you to where you want to be, right? So have the end in mind and you'll be much more successful. That actually can work for individuals too. If you're creating kind of your own individual plan, whether it's a career plan or specifics for your year, whatever it might be, what are you trying to achieve? We oftentimes can do a lot of business work, kind of spinning our wheels, feel like we're working 18 hours a day and not seeing the results. A plan can really hold you accountable, right? But if you just kind of have all these like little specifics as your business plan, and you don't go back to think about that business side of it. So that's the B in BEST. Like, what is that thing that can kind of help you get to where you want to be to drive that success? It's going to be all for nothing, right? So think of the railroad. Think of how they got there and how they had to develop that. What is maybe some of that research they have to do up front? What's some of the networking you need to do with other successful people? What does that look like internally in your industry? So internally, inside and outside of your organization, competitors in the industry, or whatever might that look like, and then even outside the industry. other successful stories of things, case studies that have worked for businesses that you can learn from and kind of mirror them, even though you're in a different industry. If you've heard of KISS, you know where this is going. Keep it simple, stupid. I don't mind. I don't want to insult anyone that's tuning in, but reality is business plans sometimes get too complicated. So how can you simplify it to really deliver on what you're trying to accomplish? The whole analysis paralysis is something that you got to be careful of. There are definitely types of personalities that will get so stuck in the metrics and analyzing all the data that they don't pull their head out of the hole to say, hey, we're actually doing the right thing or we're not doing the right thing. Or they might spend their whole work week focusing in on the numbers and the analysis where they're supposed to do other stuff to be more successful. So make sure you kind of keep it simple. I'd be careful not to go too far with that. But if you can kind of simplify things, you'll be more successful when it comes to business planning. Kind of wrapping it up with some best practices with business planning is really try to figure out how you can go from that wide angle lens to the narrow specific focus, like a sniper rifle, like they're really focused on what they're trying to accomplish. I do think that people that can kind of box out the noise will be more successful, right? The more that are targeted and focused on what they want to do. Life throws all kinds of curveballs. Literally, sometimes we can hit them out of the park, but other times it just gets us way off target. Stick with that railroad analogy. If you really want to get to where you want to go and a new business opportunity arises or some kind of trouble comes up or whatever it might be and it's taking you off the tracks, as quickly as you can, call time out and just stop the train and say, hey, is that really the direction that we want to go in? Should we be laser focused? I've heard of really successful businesses. They actually start to create other sister businesses that are related because as they're successful, they uncover all kinds of other opportunities. Sometimes that's the right thing to do. Other times it can get you really distracted. So is it better to do one thing really great and be the best at it? Or is it to be better to juggle all 12 of those balls and do a little of everything and do it well, or have that one thing that you're great at? I can't hammer it home enough that you want to think about sharing ownership of ownership. And that doesn't just mean giving people shares in your organization, right? This could mean just allowing them to have a seat at the table for discussions. I can remember one time I had worked at a large organization and it was financial services related, and they were tied to a bank. And so they would actually do this. A credit to them. They would have a senior executive get people from all the different departments together and randomly selected. As far as I know, I was kind of a junior employee. Randomly selected and put us in a room and ask us questions. And we kind of sat around like a horseshoe. It was up in the executive dining room, I think like the 33rd floor in Boston. And we went up, and this guy was a really intimidating guy, right? He just looked like an ex-military type of person, was very successful, very driven. And he came across that way. In his intro, he was pretty direct, like what he was trying to accomplish. And he didn't do a lot of meet and greet type of time. So he's a busy executive. The food comes out pretty fast. Salad comes out. Nobody touches it. I think people took drink orders, but they were like too nervous to drink the stuff. And so then the food comes out, and it has a plate of chicken and rice. I think everyone kind of got the same thing. Maybe people had a choice, but I remember everyone kind of having the same thing. And I was starving. I was pretty young. I literally think everyone was just too intimidated to talk. So this whole focus group is a disaster. And I go to cut my chicken, and it makes the worst screeching noise of all time. Like, and my chicken goes flying over the table, and the rice shoots up like confetti, like just shoots up. And everybody starts dying laughing at me. And I look around, and I'm so embarrassed. I'm turning red. And I see this guy that's so intimidating burst out laughing too. And I can tell you right after that moment, everybody was engaged, they're laughing, they're talking, they're sharing. And the senior guy comes, hey, Byrnes, come here. And I'm like, oh boy, I'm in trouble. Why is he calling me over? So everyone's kind of going back to the department, and they're leaving. He keeps me after. He goes, I got to take you on the road with me. That was awesome. I know it's probably embarrassing for you, but you warmed up the room in a way that I didn't even think I needed to do that. And so he was going to have a totally different a different approach as he went from city to city with this kind of focus group roadshow. So think about how you can kind of make this fun. I accidentally stumbled into that success story for that executive, but if you can think of some way that this just doesn't have to feel like, nails on a chalkboard. Some people hate planning. Again, I'm a consultant. I love this, but there will be some resistance to this. So how can you encourage people, make them feel comfortable, whatever it be? I also think you should have some follow-up to people that contribute. One is, we heard your feedback, we heard your ideas, we want to let you know we're going to implement them. Two would be, hey, we want to thank you for all the extra time you did, and here's your reward. And a half-day PTO day, or whatever it might be. Or maybe there's a contest. The best idea wins something, and you give someone some fancy dinners or a big flat screen TV or whatever you have in your budget. You're more likely to kind of get some great ideas. The whole suggestion box idea, I don't think that stuff really works unless there's something to motivate people to put that in there. Don't forget to put your clients in the center of all this. The people that put their clients first oftentimes have the most successful businesses. That doesn't mean that you can't have a scalable business, and it doesn't mean you have to be the Ritz and have the best of everything, whatever that best is in your category. It depends on your service model and who you're trying to provide and profitability and all that stuff. But if you put your clients at the center of this and you try to plan around them first, you're more likely to be successful as a business. And this is true for nonprofits too. Like if whoever they're trying to serve, if they think of them first, then other things kind of fall in place, like fundraising and different other specifics within a plan. Last thing I'll hammer home is just use your business plan. There are too many times where I'll actually look at people and say, hey, we're 3 months into the business plan, 6 months into the business plan, how are we doing? And they just go white, right? Like they're like, no idea, right? They haven't looked at it in forever. Again, plan for it, have some timing on the calendar. One of the things I love is a little nugget I'll leave with you at the end of this is color code the business plan. So again, make it a living and breathing document and track some things. And if it's green, if you're on target, make it green. If it's yellow, you haven't got to it or you're falling behind, that yellow kind of caution light will make sure you focus in on it. Red is just a red flag, right? Like, hey, why is this red? Senior management, when they see that type of reporting that bubbles up to them, they're like, oh my goodness, they'll go right there. So be kind of cautious about what that might be. But there are times within a business plan, right? It's a living document. So there are times where you make decisions within a year or within the time frame of the business plan that you decide that you don't have the resources to do something, or something pulled you in the wrong direction, but it had the right reason, so you had to modify the business plan. So again, something might fall in the parking lot, and that whole parking lot might be red because you're just not getting to it. So color coding can be really effective. I'm a visual person. You don't want to have a business plan where somebody has to read it, and it takes 2 hours of their week every single week. It's just not going to make you very effective. I hope this advice has been helpful. I really would love to hear from you to let me know if this program is actually providing some useful information. If you want to find me, just Google me, Mike Byrnes, Byrnes Consulting, and you can just go to the contact firm and contact page and get my information. But really, am I delivering the advice that you want to succeed? What are the other things that you want me to cover? I'd love to hear from you. Once again, this is another episode of Business Bests. I'm Mike Byrnes. I love talking about this stuff. I hope it's helping you, and I can't wait to hear from you. Thank you for tuning in.